Looks like we've got ourselves another example of Democrats shooting themselves in the foot. Because of course. And funny enough, it's actually being criticized and pointed out by none other than Gavin Newsom, California's governor. Once again, not exactly someone who has been known for being a firebrand progressive or being particularly tough, although, to be fair, he has been tougher on Trump. In fact, he just called out the government shutdown deal as being a quote-unquote pathetic surrender. And honestly, he's got a point. Okay, look, for those who are not aware, okay, we have been living through the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, about 40 days, okay, during which 1.4 million federal workers either got fired or worked without pay. That sucks. Air travel had ground to a halt. SNAP benefits were delayed for 40+ million Americans. Classic Washington bullshit, right? But here's where it gets really interesting, okay? And by interesting, I mean absolutely infuriating, okay? Over the weekend, 8 Democrats decided to break ranks with Chuck Schumer and vote with Republicans to end the shutdown without getting anything in return. They got nothing. That's right, Jeanne Shaheen, Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire, of course. You had Angus King in Maine, and then Dick Durbin, John Fetterman, Catherine Cortez Masto, Tim Kaine, Jackie Rosen. All of those people betrayed Democratic leadership, or maybe they didn't. Maybe there was like some sort of secret deal here. Maybe Chuck Schumer's like, no, you guys can go ahead since you're not up for re-election until like 2028, so you're not going to get any backlash for this. I don't know, but either way, they either betrayed Democratic leadership or were following orders, okay, and betrayed progressives and the millions of Americans who rely on healthcare. Now, you actually had progressive leaders, like, for example, Bernie Sanders, saying, no deal, no, we are not going to reopen the government until you extend the ACA subsidies. Not promise to extend them. Put the bill in front of us, in the budget bill. Put it in there, and we will vote for it. And we will reopen the government and extend the ACA subsidies at the same time. But no, Republicans didn't want to do that. Okay. So now, if anything, what happened is an indictment about Chuck Schumer's leadership or lack thereof. Either they didn't respect him because he was, voting no. And he's like, oh, we need to be strong. We know the whole line. Or, like I said before, there was like a previous or a secret agreement, okay, that they were making. Like, oh, go ahead. No, you can end the shutdown because, our donors in the airline industry are not too happy. And the airline industry, of course, being some of the country's biggest welfare queens, okay? I'm just saying. Look, progressives, though, were saying, hey, don't buy this, trust us, we'll get it done later bullshit. But apparently, the moderates, so-called moderates, were like, no, we're going to do it anyway. You can trust Republicans when they tell you, that we're going to do it. We're going to have a vote, everybody. Yeah, no. Look, here's what this is all about, all right? It's not just about reopening the government, obviously. We're talking about the ACA premium tax credits, all right, that helped keep insurance a little bit more affordable for millions of Americans. Still not all that affordable, honestly, but could be a lot worse. I mean, there's a lot of Americans out there that currently have sticker shock every time they look at the new prices for 2026 on the exchanges, okay? Whew. Now, speaking of Newsom, right, why he's speaking up to about 2 million Californians alone depend on those subsidies, which expire in January 1st. And without them, again, you have premiums that are going to double, if not triple. Disastrous. So Newsom makes a point that is pretty crystal clear, right? The Senate deal will fund the government until January 30th, but he points out it makes absolutely no guarantee about extending the healthcare subsidies. Classic Washington move. All right? Kick the can down the road. But you got millions of Americans that will pay the price. Think about it this way. Democrats have spent about a decade trying to defend the ACA against Republicans' repeal and replace. Remember that? Remember that? They finally got Republicans on the defensive against healthcare, all right, or about healthcare, I should say. And now we're supposed to trust that the very same people who've been trying to destroy the ACA will negotiate in good faith if we just give them what they want by reopening the government. When was the last time Republicans actually came through on their side of any bargain? Again, they've been trying to repeal the ACA for over a decade. They've had more false starts than a college football team. All right. Why would they suddenly become reasonable in December when they couldn't be reasonable for the last 10 years at least? I mean, come on. I mean, seriously. Look, Democrats actually had leverage for now. Okay? The shutdown is absolutely destroying Republicans politically. The public blames them. Check the polling on that. And yet, why surrender then, if that's the case, the leverage that you have for promises that Republicans have a track record of breaking? Well, it's because we have 8 so-called moderate Democrats who think, oh, no, bipartisanship is more important than, winning. Think kind of weird. Same kind of centrist BS mentality that gives us Republican-like policies instead of actual bold progressive leadership. They're operating under the assumption that if you just give Republicans a chance to be reasonable, the fever will break. Remember Obama saying that? I do. Average Farm remembers. And guess what? Never broke. They will never end up being reasonable. And thinking that they will, I mean, you might as well think that, oh, yeah, no, Mitch McConnell's going to start supporting Medicare for all. Okay? That's what you sound like. Oh, no, the fever will break, and Mitch McConnell will finally realize that giving health care to everybody would be a great idea. It will help so many people. Yes, it would, but that's why Mitch McConnell doesn't want to do that. But anyway, back to Gavin Newsom. Again, he called this a pathetic surrender, and that's actually strategically correct and brilliant. Another rare W for Newsom. Obviously, if Republicans do not honor this agreement, this deal, and there is no vote, and those subsidies end up lapsing, because again, it's very likely that they will not honor this at all, then he'll be able to point to this and say, I saw this one coming. I called it out. He can also use this as a warning shot for other Democrats. Because, we know he's going to try and probably run for president. Let's be honest. But maybe that thinking he's going to be like, well, don't think that you can try to triangulate your way out of these things and get away with it. Progressives are watching. Democratic voters are watching. And look, Democrats are tired of leadership that caves at the first sign of any sort of political pressure. It's true. This whole situation highlights something that drives progressives like myself absolutely bonkers. The Democratic establishment has an addiction to reasonable compromise, even when it weakens our positions. Right now, we had the narrative on healthcare. Republicans are going to take your healthcare away. And that could have forced Republicans to either cave or own a prolonged shutdown during the holiday season, which would have absolutely been disastrous for them. Instead, we get these 8 so-called moderate Democrats who think that being reasonable is more important than actually being effective. And I say reasonable with quotes here. This actually is the same mindset that gave us the ACA instead of Medicare for all. And couldn't even give us a $15 minimum wage. Okay? We still have a federal minimum wage of $7.25. It just gives us compromise positions that Republicans end up using to go even further to the right. And of course, the real problem here is these Democrats, they're not actually moderate. They're not actually centrists. They're either afraid of their own shadows or they're paid to lose. Controlled opposition. that lets Republicans walk all over them and then calls it bipartisanship. Obviously, the real winners here are Republicans. They got the government. It's probably going to, they're going to probably reopen the government and didn't have to give up anything substantive on healthcare and can now spend the entirety of December, okay, claiming that, oh, no, we're willing to negotiate, while knowing the Democrats have already shown that they will fold if the pressure gets high enough. Now, for federal workers, this deal does get them back to work, and it promises back pay. That's good. For the millions of Americans who rely on SNAP, the government's going to start operating again. Okay. But for the 20 million Americans who could lose their health care subsidies in December, I mean, nothing's been solved. The promise of a December vote is nice, but it ain't no guarantee. I mean, Mike Johnson, he hasn't even promised that there will be a vote in the House. And given how Republicans have operated for the past 4 years, expecting them to start playing by the rules in December seems optimistic at best. It's kind of like expecting your cat not to knock stuff off the tables. Here's what this actually shows us, okay? The ongoing tension within the Democratic Party between progressives who want to fight and moderates who want to sit there and negotiate. The problem is, when you're fighting against people who've never negotiated in good faith to begin with, your moderates end up being people who just get walked all over on, okay? They lose gracefully instead of actually fighting to win. The progressive position, it's not about trying to be an obstructionist here. It is actually about recognizing that when you have leverage, you freaking use it, okay? When you have public opinion on your side, you push your advantage. When Republicans are on the defensive about healthcare, you do not hand them a victory in exchange for some vague IOUs. So yeah, Newsom was right. He called it a pathetic surrender. Now the question now is whether those 8 Democrats actually do get what they've been promised by Republicans, or whether or not this is just another example of centrist Democrats getting absolutely played by Republicans who never had any intention of negotiating in good faith. And given the track record, I ain't holding my breath. But at least now everyone knows exactly what happened, who voted for what, and why it matters. Because you know what? Sometimes calling a surrender, the first step towards actually winning the war.